Okay, Max is back. I have done what I could about the lighting. It is what it is. You know, the truth is not a beauty contest. It's not a popularity contest. It's not a democracy. Okay. Y'all know I recently had to change out computers for a little while. And I put back online an old machine that I hadn't used since, I think it was basically 2011 or whatever, somewhere in there. And my old bookmarks were still on it. And one of those old bookmarks was, went to a thing called the Organic Prepper. Yeah, the Organic Prepper site. That was Daisy Luther back in the day. And back in that day, 2010, 2011, maybe early 2012, somewhere along in there, Daisy Luther talked about organic gardening and preserving food and canning tomatoes. And she talked about things like how to keep your chicken coop clean. And that was the sort of thing that she was into. But as many of us have done, Daisy Luther evolved over time. She is still the organic prepper. She does still occasionally talk about chicken coops and tomatoes and, you know, whatever. But she, in her evolution, her online evolution, has become an astute observer of the scene. Yes, and I'm bringing this up because yesterday I kind of stumbled onto some information that I felt was like the bombshell had gone off under my chair. It struck me as the Holy Grail, or rather the unholy Grail. I really, this was the mother lode. And not too long after I found this particular document, Daisy Luther also found it. And she got right on it, and she put up a piece. I put up several pieces as I, for me it was an evolution. I started with one hint and followed that clue to the next one, and so on and so forth, the way things come to me. You know, I don't generally have a plan. I feel like most of the time I'm somehow spirit directed, and that was the case with this. So there was reference. The first thing I noticed was that Superstation 95, who is certainly on the certainly on somebody's shit list. I'll put it that way. Superstation 95 out of New York did not update for nearly 24 hours, and so I felt that they were either being messed with one way or another by .gov or that something untoward was taking place. And so when Super Station 95 did come up, I saw what had happened. There had apparently been a tragic accident, a death, which I think was probably in the very close family. And yeah, a 22-year-old man and his 20-year-old very pretty girlfriend were killed in a common accident, a motorcycle, which evidently upended some kind of an old SUV that was stopped behind a school bus. That was the story. But along with this tragic little eulogy obituary, there was other information posted that had to do with this document. I'm not saying that this did happen, but I felt at the time when I first read this, what was so important about that document that that radio station may have been taken down to keep that information from being aired. It's the way my mind works. I kind of know how psychopaths think, and that's the way they would think. So anyway, this document has appeared, and I am not the only one who found it. However, Daisy Luther, after sleeping on it overnight or however long a time, has reconsidered her viewpoint. And she has amended her post with regard to this information. So I want to go into this information a little deeper than she did. But I will start with what Daisy Luther has put up and just kind of skim through her piece. And I will put up a link to her piece. I'm scrolling up here to the top of it. So this is her piece for today when she's kind of retracting her earlier remarks. And she starts out by saying, yes, Virginia, there really is a poll fairy skewing the polls in favor of Hillary Clinton. Yesterday, I wrote about a brand new leak that had come my way. I read through the first 5 pages, confirmed that the 2 entities in the document were genuine and were really in cahoots, and quickly got out the information that the polls we are seeing with Clinton in the lead are fake. But, Daisy goes on, in full disclosure, I made a mistake. I really should have read the last 3 pages. Because if I had, I wouldn't have published the document as a legitimate leak. It was full of outrageous Hollywood sci-fi salvage options for the campaign that included magnetized mind control and a fake alien invasion. It's interesting to note that of all those options actually do exist, DARPA experiments on things like that and on things even creepier. However, it seems far-fetched that the Clinton campaign would or could go that far, and even more so, that a business that does polls and analyzes them would have experimented with the tactics. So I removed the post. There are enough lies and rumors going around the internet without me adding to them. Okay, y'all follow that? So she goes on. That isn't the end of the story, though, because part of that document was legit. Stopping right there with Daisy Luther for a minute. I will interject at this point that I believe all parts of that document are legit. They are insane, but they are legit. Okay, so Daisy Luther goes on. I began to do further research and discovered that the gist of the fake document was accurate. The polls in the mainstream media that show Hillary in the lead are being faked, and they're being bought and paid for. We're all being manipulated by the collusion of Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and the media. Their attempts at predictive programming through fake polls is so blatant that even the most oblivious people have noticed that something seems awry. It has long been a successful method of propaganda to leave in just enough truth to make the lie seem viable. In Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler wrote, emphasis is mine, she says, all this was inspired by the principle, which is quite true within itself, that in the big lie there is always a certain force of credibility. Because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they more readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie, since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods. It would never come into their heads to fabricate colossal untruths, and they would not believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. That's true. It's very hard for normal people to think like a psychopath. They just really can't grope it. Even though the facts which prove this to be so may be brought clearly to their minds, they will still doubt and waver and will continue to think that there may be some other explanation. For the grossly impudent lie always leaves traces behind it, even after it has been nailed down, a fact which is known to all expert liars in this world, and to all who conspire together in the art of lying, unquote. Interjection here. Yesterday, Jenny was very despondent. She told me that she just was convinced now that Hillary Clinton would be the next president. There were just too many people too stupid. And Jenny was just despondent. She just could not see any other possibility. And this was after, of course, a day's worth of watching online, and the TV had been on, off and on during the day. And anyway, Jenny had been subjected to a day's worth of propaganda one way or another, and had reached that conclusion. And Jenny is smart and she's on it. But if this was the effect that it had on Jenny, it would be fair to say that many, 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 many other people in the United States had similar reactions to the propaganda, the untruth propaganda. So we see how effective it actually was. All right, going on, back to Daisy Luther. Daisy says, first of all, I found a copy of the disbursements from a Clinton-aligned super PAC called Priorities USA Action on the website Red State Watcher. And she's put this copy of this document up. And you can see that later. This shows that the super PAC paid the princely, or should I say, presidential sum of $391,000 and some change for polls that were overwhelmingly positive to Clinton. So then Daisy Luther goes on, and her personal research from that point delves into issues involving polls. That's where she went with her research. These documents appear to be legitimate. The website Conservative Treehouse did a great analysis and posted links to the FEC, Federal Election Commission, filing PDFs from the super PAC, as well as screenshots. Here are the links to that PDF. Pages 92 and 118 show that they did indeed make the payments shown above. So then she goes on and talking about all this, and reaches the conclusion, she says, other sources concur that the polls being broadcast by the mainstream are skewed and or outright fake. And she provides information to support that statement. I'm not myself going into all of that at this moment. Scrolling down, I'm still on Daisy Luther's rather large, intensive report of this matter. But, she says, here's the real conspiracy. I think there is a Clinton-based conspiracy to cast doubt on everything coming out of the opposition, which in turn reinforces everything coming from them. By opposition, she is no doubt referring to the candidacy of Donald Trump. Listen, you all, this is not limited to the candidacy of Donald Trump. But Daisy Luther is a little bit more conservative in the direction that her research takes. She ends up at the same place I do, but she goes about it way different. Going on. She is still talking about all of that. Um, it's easy to see how this supports the possibility of a stolen election. Remember during the debate when Donald Trump refused to say that he would accept the outcome of the election if it wasn't in his favor? Not only has Camp Clinton been caught more than once rigging the election, they're redoubling their effort in social perception. Social perception, that's a nice way of saying brainwashing. Social engineering, their efforts in social perception. Here are a few ways they're doing it. The discrediting of websites which are open about their dislike of Hillary Clinton. The fake polls that assure everyone that Clinton's victory is guaranteed. That's what happened yesterday, basically, with Jenny. She was exposed to a lot of information that assure everyone that Clinton's victory is guaranteed. Number three, the manipulation of public opinion through false reporting in the mainstream media. Number four, potentially putting up websites with fake conservative names in order to spread misinformation in the hopes that other conservative websites will make the posts go viral, then disproving the rumor they started themselves. Then Daisy says, coincidentally or not, I've spent hundreds of dollars over the past few weeks because my websites have been hacked. Yeah, Daisy, damn girl. I'd love to know if any other alternative media sites are having these issues. If you have information on this, drop me a quick private message on Facebook. This is a real shit show, isn't it? Signed, Daisy Luther. All right, with that background, I am going to go to this document. It doesn't copy and paste very easily or very well. The first time that I actually got this up on my screen, my computer crashed. This is a Microsoft Word document, Clinton internal docs. And it has what appears to be an October date. This is a very well-made PDF. Pages 1 through 7. It's called the Salvage Program. Benison Strategic Group. Address 1000 Potomac Street, Northwest, Washington, D.C. They give their telephone number, their logo, their letterhead. This is a very impressive looking document, and it's very impressively assembled and put together. And this is not the work of somebody, at my level of development or lower, sitting in a basement somewhere, creating a PDF. And I do not believe that this is a forgery. I think it is a legitimate document. Now, Daisy Luther found several pages of this to be a legitimate document. I, however, think it is all a legitimate document. Interviews with 2,021 adult Americans conducted by telephone on October 10th through the 13th, 2016, the margin of sampling error for results based on the total sample is plus or minus 2 percentage points. The sample uses a LVS based on voting history, 65%, self-attestation, 12%, social media data mining, 10%, demographic social economic class, 18%. This sample includes 1,101 interviews among landline respondents and 920 interviews among cell phone respondents. No skews or narrative screens were employed. Executive overview. Hillary Clinton flash crash to 12% favorable, losing 19 to 77% nationally. At this point, Donald Trump has both momentum and enthusiasm. Distrust in the mainstream media is blunting the impact of the collective polling narrative. As Election Day approaches, Hillary Clinton's favorable ratings have crashed to historic lows, 12% in nonpartisans, and Donald Trump is consolidating support. 97% of LV Republican identifying respondents are either enthusiastic or very enthusiastic about voting for Trump. Among independents, Hillary voters who are exposed to any alternative media, 73%, are aware of the WikiLeaks emails and find them either disturbing, 54%, or deeply disturbing, 18%. Among liberal identifying whites, support is shifting from Hillary, negative 27 since October 1st, to Donald Trump, or Donald Trump at 78%, or Jill Stein at 21%. October, this sample was taken during the dates of October 10th through the 13th. The big WikiLeaks hack and dump associated with Julian Assange had not taken place yet. So I imagine that the numbers are affected by the more recent WikiLeaks information that has come roaring out. I'm skipping down. I'll just read a little bit more. On other fronts, the counter narrative is failing as well. Most heavy consumers of social media understand that the allegations against Donald Trump of sexual misconduct have largely been debunked, 77%. We understand that communication strategies in that space have been unable to reduce the impact of this messaging. Worse, among white males in telephone polling, 93% of them either approve 72%, or strongly approve, 21%, of Donald Trump's hot mic tape. Only 39% of women approve of them. However, a majority say they understand that confident men talk that way. In effect, these allegations have been disfused. I would say that that certainly is a correct assessment. On a positive note, most respondents who were liberal-leaning or independent were unaware of the messaging front concerning Bill Clinton's sexual misconduct, while the vast majority were aware of consensual extramarital relationships. The mainstream media approach to the stories has left only 8% of liberal-leaning voters and only 19% of the independents aware of the allegations of rape. On a disturbing note, some 70% of Republican-leaning voters are aware bust-in voting, false face operations, and dead man's party registration drives. This may necessitate severe strategy changes for November. All right, so they've done this poll, this legitimate poll. They really wanted to know what the hell are the facts for for ourselves. We want this information. So this is legitimate, the numbers they've come up with and so forth. And then based upon that information, they have done this assessment. On a disturbing note, 70% of Republican-leaning voters are aware of bust-in voting, false face operations, and dead man's party registration drives. And those being, older tactics that they have used for decades. And so this assessment is, this may necessitate severe strategy changes for November. Going on, that all was on page 1, do not distribute and do not copy. Going on to page 2 is the details. Page 2 and 3 and 4, I believe, are all, it's loading slowly on these other pages as I scroll down. I'll have to wait on that. Anyway, the information covers the exact breakdown of what questions were asked and how those questions were answered. That in itself is a very informative study, which I am not going to go there right now. So we're going to look now at the salvage operations. In other words, what their assessment, what Hillary's, the assessment that Hillary paid for, had performed, shows that the tactics are not working. Therefore, their campaign has to be salvaged. And this is the salvage program. Salvage options, recommendations, and alternatives. We have analyzed a number of potential salvage options and have a strong recommendation. This is on page 6 of the 7. I have made this PDF the link to this PDF available in several places. You all hopefully can bring it up on your own screens at some point in time. At this moment, I'm going to scroll down to the last page and to the last part of the last page. Where it says, this is what they are recommending. They have the ability to produce these effects across 23% of the continental United States. This is that of the aftermath of fire sign. They're calling this strategy fire sign. The aftermath of fire sign will be the psychological subjugation of areas where uprisings are most likely to occur. The induced trauma of fire sign will provide ample cover to government and NGOs who will be providing aid, psychotropic, to induce docility, to make people docile, and counseling services, which will ensure further domestication. We have created a schedule and team rosters that can be moved into position following the third debate. So they did not, whoever created this document did so before the third debate. All right. Not recommended salvage options. These are options they've had on the table based on their assessment. This is the page that hit me, that I felt like this damn thing here. Here's the smoking gun. This is the mother lode. This, oh my God, I was just flabbergasted. We have analyzed a number of potential salvage options and have a strong recommendation. So we will, non-recommended salvage options. The first optional scenario, which they have apparently decided against, Red Dawn. They're not going to do Red Dawn. Support is too widespread. While a Red Dawn scenario using UN forces and Canadian border infill would be effective in shutting down northern voting, it would simply delay the inevitable and result in hardened support for Mr. Trump. Risk and issues. Loss of property and life, and alt-right forces are prepared for battle. So they have decided not to select Red Dawn as their salvage option. The second salvage option that they have rejected, they're not going to do this, is something called cobalt rain. The public has been primed for radiological attack, and stockpiles have been positioned. But while the psychological impact of a CO-60 weapon is severe, the threshold of opportunity may have passed for this to stop a vote. Risk and issues: loss of profit under martial law, and leaks could compromise. You know, my thought is all of this to prevent the American public from going to the polls on November 8th and casting votes for Donald Trump. Going on, the next option that they have apparently decided not to utilize is the Black Lives riots. Again, while staged civil unrest could prevent pockets of America from voting, the damage is too widespread. Risks and issues: command and control is dicey at this point, as substantial numbers of employed minorities have defected to Trump. You know, we have watched these various scenarios being developed, fielded, put into place, advanced. We have known they have had all these alternatives, A, B, C, and D. We have known all this. As looking at their risks and issues, that's right. Okay, the Zika apocalypse. Now, I myself have not gotten very involved in that. Others have, however. Improved strains of Zika virus have been delivered, and we have disseminated them to operatives. Unfortunately, this will suppress women voters more than men, even as Zika virus 2 is lethal in adults. This would hurt Hillary Clinton, and Trump voters are willing to risk lethal pathogens to vote. So they're saying that this Zika virus, if they were to release that, it would keep more women from going to the polls. And it is women that they are counting for many of their votes. This would hurt Hillary, and Trump voters are willing to risk lethal pathogens to vote. The risks and issues involved with that, as they see it, is post-election control. Once they don't even know how they would control that if they were to release it. Idiot sticks. Now, this next item I found very interesting. Sharia escalation. Non-recommended salvage option. Sharia escalation. States have blocked key immigrant operatives. Without the required Muslim Islamist population in place, the IE plan would not be sufficiently impactful. Y'all hear that? Risks and issues. Leo is pro-Trump and will not roll over due to Muslim demands of political correctness. Law enforcement officers as a bloc is pro-Trump, and they will not roll over due to Muslim demands of political correctness. And they were not able to get enough key immigrant operatives, boots on the ground, in place. Non-recommended salvage option. The last non-recommended salvage option that they detail is called a natural disaster. HARP is in skeleton crew mode. Subterranean thermobaric devices in fracking mines are untested, and surveys suggest this might not stop Trump voters. Risks and issues. Unproven techniques, unintended consequences. Reactivating HARP may have pale horse protocol ramifications. At this moment, I do not know what pale horse protocol ramifications means or may indicate. So they've ruled out using Red Dawn, using Cobalt Rain, that's using the Black Lives Matter riots, using the Zika virus, using Sharia escalation, using a falsified, creating an unnatural disaster of huge proportions. So what is their recommended salvage plan then? It's something called fire sign. For almost 2 decades, the Department of Defense and NASA have coordinated on a Black Book project under the code name Fire Sign. Fire Sign's aim is to create a religious awe effect. Religious awe effect in enemy populations to create an instantaneous psychological soft kill, abject submission. The operation uses high-powered lasers to project real-seeming images on the sodium layer 100 kilometers above the surface. These images can cover hundreds or even thousands of square miles and can appear completely real, three-dimensional, and can move. These visual cues are augmented with pulsed ELF, electromagnetic emissions, parentheses, see Project Sanguini, that attack the specific areas of the prefrontal cortex that are stimulated during religious experience. In limited tests, subjects have been able to be overwhelmed on both axis of vastness. That's an overwhelming of the subject's frame of reference. Something is just so big that they have no frame of reference for that. Overwhelming of the subject's frame of reference. And a powerful need for accommodation. The mix of these two will produce inaction, lack of focus on self or individual interaction, and gross transformations in mental equilibrium. In other words, a road to Damascus experience. I'm going to read this over. Not done with it. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to read it over. All right, this is page 6 of 7. We're going on now to page 7. Again, do not distribute and do not copy. They did not want this shit out. Once again, okay. The ability to produce these effects across 23% of the continental United States is the objective of fire sign, and field tests in the Levant have proved successful. Stop right there a minute. I had a brief discussion with Purple in Texas, and I had to confess to her that I am not sure where geographically the Levant is located. I have heard that term, but I cannot define it for myself or for you. I am not sure where the Levant, where this location is. The ability to produce these effects across 23% of the continental United States is the objective. So if they could do this over a little less than 1/4 of the continental United States, that would be enough. Going on. The fire sign scenario is that of an invading extraterrestrial force of nearly incomprehensible scale. Massive floating cities descending, God-sized walkers among the clouds with terrifying weapons, wheels of fire and eyes, etc. This phenomena, when activated, will bring electoral and social systems to a halt, and in afflicted areas will permit a narrative wherein POTUS is able to call a halt to the invasion and then hand over the torch to Clinton, providing a basic continuity of state. Aftermath. The aftermath of fire sign will be the psychological subjugation of areas where uprisings are most likely to occur. The induced trauma of fire sign will provide ample cover to governments and NGOs who will be providing aid, psychotropic, to induce docileness, and counseling services which will ensure further domestication. Fire sign will require a great deal of power, mobile command stations with nitrogen-cooled supercomputers, and the co-opting of the ELF arrays. We've created the schedule and teams roster that can be moved into position following the third debate. There are images and diagrams of this apparatus on pages 6 and 7 of this PDF. For those of you who understand this kind of drawing, I would ask you to please go and look at these contraptions. I will just, for those who might not have the ability to see this for yourself, I will describe the image as it is on page 7 of this document. And I will start from the bottom, which is shows a computer screen and a controller box. Wavefront sensor. Then the arrow goes up to a deformable mirror. Deformable mirror, which goes to an infrared camera spectrograph, which corrects the wavelength, or rather it takes the corrected wavelength and distorts it, and sends the distorted wavefront up the line to an optical fiber, and a laser beam comes in from somewhere. This continues to go up the line on the laser beam to the sodium layer, and creates the hologram image. Those who are more scientific than I certainly have a better understanding of this than I do. But with my limited knowledge, I know that one of the goals, there were multiple goals, there still are multiple goals with regard to the chemtrails. One goal, of course, always has to do with manipulating the weather, manipulating the fake ice age, manipulating all of that, but also creating this sodium layer of whatever, 100 kilometers above the surface, to serve as, in effect, the screen upon which they are going to show this movie. It is the way I can conceive of this insane thing in my mind. And this, to this audience, is not new at all. We have known about the essence of this for many years, and would think of it as being Project Bluebeam. So this is a updated version, I guess, of Project Bluebeam. No wonder Daisy Luther had to step away. I kind of do too, because I am stupefied with the idea that would these lunatics actually try to do something this stupid? And would they try to do it for the purpose of preventing Americans from going to the polls? I mean, talk about overkill. I don't know. It just is so crazy. Okay, but I want to go back here. I'm going back here to page 6 because I think there is ample evidence that they have done this. They have tested this. They are utilizing it. And this is not past tense. This is contemporary. I'm going to read this section again. For almost 2 decades, the Department of Defense and NASA have coordinated on a black book project under the code name Firesign. Firesign's aim is to create a religious awe effect in enemy populations to create an instantaneous psychological soft kill, abject submission. I don't know if y'all can remember, but in the first Desert Storm, Gulf War, Bush's Gulf War I, Desert Storm, in 1992, I believe it was, in 91 or 92, there actually was an incident where something happened that caused large numbers of boots on the ground military to throw down their weapons and surrender. And it was speculated at that time that they had seen something that scared the holy hell out of all of them. It was stunning, and I remember then it was Colin Powell, who was Army Chief of Staff, and I remember him talking about that strange incident. I remember Norman Schwarzkopf, who was the commanding military general of Desert Storm, that first Gulf War under Bush, the old Bush. He was on CNN, which was newly doing 24-hour-a-day coverage of that operation, and they talked about that. I'm bringing it up because I think that they had used this in the field during that war in 1992 under Bush Sr. The operation uses high-powered lasers to project real-seeming images on the sodium layer 100 kilometers above the surface. These images can cover hundreds or even thousands of square miles and can appear completely real three-dimensional, and can move. I'm also caused to think of a remark that Dick Cheney made in 2003. Where he referenced shock and awe during that Gulf War, at the start of that Gulf War. I would say absolutely yes, they have this technology and they have used it. Going on. So they've projected this image somehow on the sky or somewhere. It wouldn't even have to be on the sky. If they were doing it on a smaller scale, they could project the image wherever, I think. But anyway, these visual cues are then augmented with pulsed ELF, electromagnetic emissions, that attack the specific areas of the prefrontal cortex that are stimulated during religious experience. In limited tests, subjects have been able to be overwhelmed. So they've tested this on individuals. They use this on individuals. And I think that this may be an explanation for something that I'm aware has happened relatively recently. In limited tests, subjects have been able to be overwhelmed on both axes of vastness. Just too big to comprehend. That's an overwhelming of the subject's frame of reference. They just don't have anything in there anywhere to formulate anything on. And then secondly, a powerful need for accommodation. I cannot think what need for accommodation is psychologically. And the way they have written it here, it's need for accommodation. But so if this test subject, who could be me, it could be you, it could be somebody we know, it could be whatever. The mix of these two will produce inaction, lack of focus on self or individual interaction, and gross transformations in mental equilibrium. All right, so what will produce inaction? They kind of go catatonic, zombie-like, catatonic. Lack of focus on self. I have seen people who were in a condition where they couldn't focus on self. They bump into things and step in puddles and don't realize it and forget to eat and are so distracted that they can barely function. Will produce inaction, lack of focus on self. or lack of individual interaction. All of a sudden, they're just not relating to anybody else. It's they are it's, who they cared about yesterday is immaterial. The relationship that they had uh, an hour before no longer mattered. And gross transformations in mental equilibrium. In other words, a road to Damascus experience. And I'm sure everyone listening to this discussion, me talking about this stuff, knows what is referenced, a road to Damascus experience. This alludes to the New Testament description of a tax collector named Saul, who was persecuting and prosecuting the early followers of Jesus Christ after them for taxes. He was a tax collector. And he was on his way to Damascus. I can't remember where he was coming from, but he was going to Damascus. And we know, of course, that Damascus was in Syria. It still is. So this Roman tax collector named Saul was on his way to Damascus. And he had an experience on the road that totally changed his mindset, changed his heart, converted him forever. And of course, Christians and many perhaps other people reading this account of what happened to Saul on that road to Damascus feel that the power of the Holy Spirit was responsible for that religious conversion. In that case. So that's what's being referenced as a road to Damascus experience. And now we see that these psychopaths who do follow and worship the God of this world, known by one of the names that the God of this world is known by is Satan, and another of the gods of this world is known by the name Lucifer. These are chief of the psychopaths. And in any case, these psychopaths who are in skin, demonic energies who are in skin, walking around on 2 feet on the planet, have built this apparatus that can supposedly mimic the authentic, real Holy Spirit road to Damascus experience. In this horrendously painful, invasive, destructive, horrid. There's not enough adjectives to describe what this experience would be like and what would have to happen to a person to recover, to come back to their self, to understand what the hell happened to me, and to get their faculties back and their thinking straightened out. And who would be targeted? Who would be selected to be such a test subject? And you know, this is far advanced. It's way beyond the test stage. It would appear that they can select anyone. And target anyone. I don't know what their criteria would be about who, when, and where to use this on individuals. But I think that this is a weapon that is being deployed. And I think that we have seen the effect in I think we have seen the effect. Who selected that target and who aimed this weapon, I don't know. But I do know that there is a power greater than ourselves. The creator of heaven and earth, who knows all things. And all that is, which is hidden, has been hidden, is going to be revealed and is being revealed. And the power of Holy Spirit is working through and with those individuals who could be called at this time. I used this phrase not too long ago. Oh God, what phrase did I use? I'm going blank. Missionaries, the missionaries of truth. Yeah, the missionaries of truth. And these missionaries of truth, you know, come in many different packages specific to the areas where they have the expertise or whatever. There is a resistance on the ground, in boots. There is a resistance. And we are aware that in many different ways we can ascertain that this is a okay, let me just cancel that out for a minute. Of these plots and plans, the optional scenarios which we know about, we have known about, that this document is saying they have not chosen. They're not going to try Red Dawn. They're not going to try the Cobalt Rain. They're not going to try the Black Lives Matter riots. They're not going to try the Zika virus. They're not going to try the Sharia escalation. And they're not going to try for an unnatural disaster in order to create enough havoc to prevent the American people going to the polls on November 8th and electing Donald Trump. Apparently, this seems to be what this is saying. However, there is one other option that is not on this list and is not recommended in this salvage fire sign thing. The other option is, of course, moving forward, and that would be World War III. All the pieces are in place for that. All the players are activated for that. And I can see this big picture in no other way than that we are presently in the what has been referenced and called the biblical time of the end. And I do see that in the biggest picture available, that this is essentially the bottom line spiritual warfare between our loving creative God and his son, Jesus the Christ, and the fallen angel God that we know as Satan. That the New World Order people and all the sodomites believe in and worship, are infected with, and that's what this whole enormous thing is that we're seeing. And of course, the election, one way or another, of Donald Trump is a relatively insignificant, but it too is a minor. It's minor compared to the biggest ramifications. All right, I've reached that point in my own head where I'm kind of, unraveling. Max's thread does unravel, And I don't have any idea how long I've talked or what I've really said, so I will just end up by saying, I love you. I always have, and I always will. Nobody walking the face of the planet is more important to me than you are. Okay, we're going to stop this broadcast. If I can find my way to the right screen. There we are. I will talk to you again soon. Keep the faith. Actually, we're doing fine. Kisses.